You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear the secretary of a social club telephoning a tourist information office to get information for a group visit to the town of Tidborough. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hello, this is Tidborough Tourist Office, Derek speaking. How can I help you?
Good afternoon. My name's Clara Swift. I'm the secretary of a social club, and we're planning a visit to Tidborough.
Oh, yes.
So I'd like to ask you some questions, if I may, to help with our plans.
Of course. We're here to help.
Now, we're thinking of staying in the youth hostel, as we'll be a group and it's quite cheap.
Yes, and comfortable too.
But could you tell me how far outside the centre it is?
Oh, it's not too bad. It's only 1 kilometre from the station, which is very convenient, and 2 kilometres from the very centre of town. There's a frequent bus service.
That doesn't sound too bad. Actually, I've tried phoning them but had no reply.
You can check out everything you need to know if you go to www.cheapstay.com. That's their own site. It's quite new. And you could email them with your requirements directly from it.
Well, that sounds good, thank you. We'll be staying in the 3rd week of March. Will there be any special events going on then?
Yes, that includes the 22nd, doesn't it? Good. That's when the street festival is held. It's great fun. Lots going on. It's held every year.
OK.
And when that's finished, if you've any energy left, you and your group might enjoy a concert we're putting on.
Is it classical music or rock?
Well, quite a mixture, actually. The point is that it's all performed by local musicians, and between them, they'll be playing most things.
It sounds a little strange, but I guess it could be interesting. It seems we've chosen a good week to come. Is there anything else on?
Oh, yes, indeed. The City Museum, which was recently completely restored, often has interesting exhibitions. There are some weird and wonderful modern paintings at the moment. That's a good exhibition. Then, opening on March the 24th, when you'll be here, it changes to natural history. I'd recommend it.
Oh, I've made a note of that. Now, some of our group are quite young, and they may prefer to do things that they feel are more active than walking round museums and so on. What will they be able to do?
Throughout March, in fact, the sports centre is going to be closed. But the swimming pool will remain open, and there's the park for general relaxation.
That sounds all right.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
And were you planning to go on any excursions while you were here?
Yes, I was going to ask you. I gather there's a very picturesque train journey out along the coast?
The Beach Express. Yes, it's lovely. It's an old-fashioned train. Not an express at all, in fact, but it chugs along, giving you marvellous views.
Does it go often?
No, it's just a tourist special, really. But it sets off in the morning at 9:30, and it's very popular, so I'd get there no later than 9:15 if I were you. The station opens at 9, so you can get a coffee or something while you wait.
It sounds lovely. And for tickets?
Well, as I say, it may be crowded at the station, so it's probably more convenient to get them beforehand from us at the tourist office. The youth hostel may sell them too. You'd have to check that.
OK, I will, thanks. How much are tickets?
£5, although students get 20% off, and if there are more than 10 of you travelling together, you get 15% off, so it's very reasonable.
Yes, that's not too bad. And is it a long ride?
Not really. I think it's about 3 hours actually in the train. You'll be back for lunch about 4 hours later. It stops twice for half an hour so you can stretch your legs, have a little stroll on one of the beaches.
I see. Well, you've been very helpful. Thank you.
Not at all. I hope you enjoy your visit. Contact us any time.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear a talk about opportunities for temporary jobs. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen to the first part of the talk and answer questions 11 to 15.
I'd like to welcome you to the presentation. It's nice to see so many of you here, and I hope that everybody ends up with suitable employment as a result of attending. Now, as you know, we at Select Hotel Recruitment are able to offer a range of work at the better hotels in the area. This month is no exception, and I'll take you through some of what we have on offer. The first job is reception assistant, and there are 3 vacancies for this position at the Park Hotel. This is quite a varied job, and in fact I should point out that at certain times of the day it will involve heavy lifting when guests' luggage arrives or perhaps deliveries come in, so bear that in mind when deciding whether to apply for this post. The Park Hotel has quite an international flavour, so you'll need to speak at least 2 foreign languages. Many guests, of course, travel by car, and you may have to take their vehicles around to the car park, so you will need to have a valid driving licence, and you will not be allowed to do the job if you haven't. They also say that basic computer skills such as word processing would be an advantage, although this isn't a requirement. OK, now, the next job is General Assistant, and there are 4 vacancies for this at the Avenue Hotel. To be honest, the pay is rather low, but there are compensatory factors that you should bear in mind when considering whether to apply. The hotel will provide you with all your meals while you're working, and they will also train you in all the aspects of the job and then issue you with a certificate, which, of course, could be very valuable to you in the future. Right, the third job on offer is catering assistant, and Hotel 56 are looking for 4 people to fill these vacancies at their smart new premises. As you know, this hotel is popular with exclusive travellers, and so you'll need to wear the distinctive staff uniform, which you're provided with. Don't consider this job unless you're fairly flexible about when you work, as the hotel will require you to work nights for this job, and you'll need to travel to and from the hotel as it's situated just outside the city. Well, that's some basic information about the opportunities we currently have on offer.
Now you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the talk and answer questions 16 to 20.
Now, if you would like to apply for one of these jobs, you'll need to follow our recruitment process. It might seem complicated, but we guarantee the hotels we work with to provide carefully vetted staff. So, the first thing you'll need to do is fill in one of these, a personal information form. It's pretty straightforward and should only take you a few minutes. Once you've done that and handed it in, we'll give you a questionnaire about your skills to do. Again, I don't expect this to take you very long. We then look through the information about you and pass on our recommendations to the relevant hotel. Hopefully you'll be accepted by your chosen hotel. Assuming you are, you will then proceed to the next step of the process and attend a general course of training. This is designed to be helpful and realistic, so an important part of the course is role-play activities. You should have some fun while you learn. OK, and after that, the final step is that you'll be contacted by the hotel you're going to work for, and they'll post you a video about themselves and the work involved. Watching this will constitute further specific training for your job. Well, I hope that's reasonably clear at this stage. Are there any questions on what I've said so far?
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear two students, Brian and Emily, talking about penguins, the subject of their current assignment. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 21 to 24.
So, Brian, how have you been doing with your reading on penguins?
Not too bad, Emily. And you?
Yeah, OK. I hadn't realised there were so many differences between the various types of penguin.
No, nor had I. Anyway, I started with the Gen 2.
And me with a rockhopper.
And it turns out they're rather cautious.
Not scared of swimming, I trust.
Oh no, but they don't like going about at night. Scared of the dark, I suppose. And if they're climbing over some rocky landscape, they'll only jump if they have to. And even then they'll look carefully down and spend time deciding whether to or not. Is that common?
I don't think so. The rockhopper will have a quick look if it's somewhere they haven't dropped down before, but they don't seem timid. In fact, they're pretty determined, and if they're trying to get up somewhere, they grip onto the stones with their slightly hooked bills, as well as their nails when the surface gets very steep. Nothing stops them.
Interesting. Because the other type I looked into, the Magellanic, tend to stick to the beach rather than going inland. So you see them walking along with their flippers at their sides or a bit forward. If they come across something they haven't seen before, they cock their head first to one side, then the other, peering out of each eye in turn, as if they don't quite believe anything until they've double-checked it. And then, When they call to each other about anything, they arch their backs strangely first, before making a very loud noise indeed.
Oh, because the king penguin stands very upright when it calls. And they have the longest flippers, which they hold towards the ground, as if they're worried about falling over. But it's quite dignified too. I think they're my favourite type.
Uh-huh.
Now you have some time to look at questions 25 to 27. Now listen to the next part of the conversation and answer questions 25 to 27.
Anyway, there are some things that they all do the same, aren't there?
Oh, yes. Eating fish, for example.
Well, of course. But sleeping, say.
Yes. Occasionally you might see one stretched out flat in the sun for a snooze.
But normally you see them standing at night, even though they're sound asleep.
It seems odd, doesn't it? And then they're all liable to get aggressive if they feel invaded, aren't they?
Yeah, not quite so sweet then. And with the rock hopper...
The one with the distinctive black and yellow feathers on its head.
That's the one. If it gets annoyed about something, then the black feathers on the head point upwards and the yellow feathers stick out. It all makes it look bigger or tougher.
I wonder how often they get annoyed.
Well, I don't know about annoyed, but they've plenty to get frightened of. They've got predators in the water and on land, well, in the sky anyway.
Oh, yes. The great skewer bird. It's after the eggs.
So the penguins have to keep a careful watch for the skewer all the time, especially when they're nesting.
They can spot the white patches in its wings, can't they, as one flies over?
Yes, and then they sit very closely on the eggs to protect them.
Not an easy life, really.
No.
Now you have some time to look at questions 28 to 30. Now listen to the rest of the conversation and answer questions 28 to 30.
So what else have we found out?
Well, I was interested to see that although they nest individually, they always go into the sea together, in large numbers.
Even though it might make them more obvious to predators.
That's the price to pay for the best way to find food. It means a bigger catch from each trip.
I see. I watched a video too, just showing them on the beach, and I was struck by how calm they seemed to be. I thought they might have looked frightened.
Perhaps it's because there are so many of them. Maybe that gives them a sense of security. In fact, all the types have a social nature.
I guess that's why we humans find them so fascinating to observe.
I guess so. So, shall we start to put all our notes together? And then I think we ought to...
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear part of a talk for tourism students about the London Eye, a modern tourist attraction in London. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 35. Now listen to the first part of the talk and answer questions 31 to 35.
Today, I want to focus on some of the major sites that attract tourists to cities and I'm going to begin with the London Eye. This giant wheel has, in a very few years, become one of the major attractions of London, and thus in the world. It's both simple in concept and awesome in delivery. Its creators are husband and wife architects David Marks and Julia Barfield. It was on their kitchen table in South London in 1993 that the first drawings for the London Eye were made, as the couple, who usually worked directly for clients, were entering a competition, the brief of which was to design millennium landmarks for the capital. In fact, nobody won, and the whole idea was scrapped, but the couple remained convinced that their dream should be pursued. They started to piece the project together and were soon attracting the attention of the press. And it wasn't long before British Airways had started to show an interest and then became a partner. As the project unrolled, everyone involved began to realise the sheer scale of what they were undertaking. It would be the largest observation wheel ever built, and over 1,700 people from a total of 5 countries would play a part in its construction. Nearly every one of its many parts and techniques needed to be invented, simply because they had never existed before. Transportation of the components would be on a scale reminiscent of pyramid building. Bringing them in meant that large parts had to fit under the various bridges of the River Thames, so this had to be timed to coincide with tides along its length. And even when completed, the Eye continues to be huge in its requirements. A small army of people are employed to look after it, with 350 hours maintenance being required every week, and apparently strange demands, such as washing all its glass with nothing but distilled water having to be met. But the views the Eye affords across London make it all worthwhile, and it's easy to understand why the Eye has become one of London's chief tourist assets.
Now you have some time to look at questions 36 to 40. Now listen to the rest of the talk and answer questions 36 to 40.
So, how is that great wheel held up? How did it get there? The starting point was, of course, the ground, and while parts of the wheel itself were still being constructed in various countries, tension piles were being driven into the ground beside the River Thames. This was the first step, and once these were securely in place, a base cap was installed over them as a kind of lock, with 2 giant plinths pointing up onto which an A-frame was attached, like a giant letter. All this took many months and incredible effort, but meant that the spindle could be installed around which the great wheel would turn. Now the project really was in business, and the vast rim, with spokes like an outsized bicycle wheel, could be brought in. The passenger capsules were assembled and hung onto the rim, each one linked by mounting rings that would support eager viewers as they rose above London. And the last thing to be built is the first thing the visitor encounters, the boarding platform laid down underneath. The whole process employed thousands of people in total and was avidly watched by millions. How long the Eye will stay is uncertain, but any talk of dismantling it always meets with immediate protest.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.